Friends, Zimbabweans, countrymen, we are here today on the day we've been waiting for, the day of the main funeral session for the late founding President Robert Gabriel Mugabe. This shall be held at the National Sports Stadium. My name is Robert Mugabe. We have people all over waiting to give you images of this important day in the history of our nation. And right now, the body of the late Robert Gabriel Mugabe is at his home at the Blue Roof, and there's very soon going to be an entourage that will be traveling to the National Sports Stadium, where dignitaries from all over the world are gathered to bid him farewell. Right now are images that you see of that entourage, and in it the hearse carrying the body of Robert Gabriel Mugabe, coming from the Blue Roof all the way to the National Sports Stadium. And we shall be giving you these images, and you shall be following the funeral procession as it snakes its way to that National Sports Stadium. You may recall Robert Gabriel Mugabe passed away in the early hours of September the 6th last week. He was admitted at Gleneagles Hospital in Singapore, and at the age of 95, he passed on. Zimbabwe is in mourning, but Zimbabwe is also in celebration, celebrating a life of a man who helped bring freedom to this country. Indeed, there's a lot to say about today, because this is the culmination of what indeed has been a life that we have celebrated, a life that we have mapped, a life that we have followed. We've had people in the studio who are giving us insights into the life of Robert Gabriel Mugabe, one of which was his former Director of National Security, Albert Ngulube. Ngulube is now the legislator for Beitbridge East constituency. And he was giving us an insight a couple of days ago with regards to the man that was Robert Gabriel Mugabe. We've also had snippets of his life brought to us by a very close friend, Father Fidelis Mukonori, a man he knew when Fidelis Mukonori was just but a Catholic brother. And we also got snippets of his life from even his very close relatives, people like Leo Mugabe, who actually is the family spokesperson for this funeral. We've heard of a person who really had at the heart of his heart education, education, education. And really, Zimbabwe celebrates the fact that he brought education to the core of the development of the nation. Right now we're seeing those images as indeed the entourage slowly makes its way up Borodale Brook Road. That road that you see is in the northeast of Harare. That road is called Borodale Brook Road, and that is the wall to the Blue Roof. Robert Gabriel Mugabe was born on the 21st of February in 1924 to Gabriel Mugabe Sr. and Bona. And he was born at Kutama Mission, raised a Catholic, and has got a lot of Catholic DNA, if you will. And it is at Kutama Mission that he showed his love for education, and he showed his insatiable appetite for anything related to education and reading. A studious person he was said to have been. And indeed, that is something that he bequeathed upon the country, upon the nation. And that's something that yesterday, when his former Deputy Prime Minister in the Government of National Unity graced this studio at Zimpapers Television Network, he was speaking highly of Robert Mugabe with regards his policies around education. And so that is the body en route to the National Sports Stadium. And as I'm saying, Robert Mugabe was a teacher in his lifetime. But I will tell you, Robert Mugabe was also a teacher even in his death, because this morning, I bet you, the word that people are learning a lot about and Googling about and researching about and learning how to spell and what it is mausoleum. And we're going to give you a bit of an insight into what a mausoleum is. And Robert Mugabe, by far, is not the first and only founding father to have been buried or to be buried in a mausoleum. And we're going to give you a bit of an insight into what a mausoleum is. And I think this will satisfy your inquiries. A mausoleum really is a chamber, a burial chamber that is built for a person, and it is there that their body is interred. It's something that is built, really. A mausoleum is an external freestanding building constructed as a monument enclosing the internment space or burial chamber of a deceased person or people. And it's a monument without, and there have been monuments known to be without the internment, and those are known as cenotaphs. But a mausoleum may be considered a type of tomb, or the tomb may be considered to be within the mausoleum. So there's a mausoleum that's going to be built at the National Sports Stadium in honor of the late Robert Gabriel Mugabe. Of course, we do know that in Zambia, for example, former President Frederick Chiluba has a mausoleum built for him. And an interesting fact with regards to the mausoleum built for Frederick Chiluba was known for loving very decent sort of etiquette with regards to his clothing. So actually, on the entrance is shaped after a tie, because he used to love his ties. So mausoleums really celebrate the people who are entombed within them. And so this mausoleum that, of course, is going to be built for Robert Gabriel Mugabe is going to be at the National Heroes Acre. Now that is Borodale Brook Road, as you see, and now they've entered into a road known as Karikria there in Borodale as they make their way to the National Sports Stadium, slowly snaking through that neighborhood. And perhaps this is his last journey from home. But we never know, because the 30-day period that we're going to be waiting for as the mausoleum is built, you never know. He's probably going to come back home again. But for all we know, we may be witnessing the last minutes of Robert Mugabe as he leaves what was his home for quite a while, the Blue Roof. And all those other vehicles, all stationary, as they also pay tribute to the man that was Robert Gabriel Mugabe, the man who helped usher in independence to the nation of Zimbabwe. And you may remember, of course, that was the 18th of April in 1980 when he came into office as the Prime Minister of a freshly independent Republic of Zimbabwe. So later on, of course, we're going to be giving you a bit of more background, more visuals with regards to mausoleums. But I think for all intents and purposes, and arguably so, the most significant, the most famous mausoleum must indeed be the Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal in India was built as a monument of love. And certainly, I'm sure Zimbabweans will be building whatever is going to be built within the next 30 days, also as a symbol of love and as a symbol of gratitude. Now perhaps just to give you a bit of fun facts on that very famous mausoleum, the Taj Mahal. It is an ivory white marble mausoleum on the south bank of the Yamuna River in the Indian city of Agra. And it was commissioned in 1632 by the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan. And it was supposed to house the tomb of his favorite wife, Mumtaz Mahal. Eventually, of course, it started to also host the body of the person who commissioned it because he wanted to lay next to his wife. Now that one is very exuberant because it also includes a mosque and a guest house, and is set in the formal gardens which are bounded on three sides by a crenellated wall. Right now, as we speak, it is actually a monument that people visit. It's a tourist attraction in itself. And it was designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1983 for being the jewel of Muslim art in India and one of the universally admired masterpieces of the world's heritage. So while we're probably cringing at the prospect that this mausoleum that's going to be built for former President Robert Mugabe is going to take 30 days, no less, it may interest you to know that the plinth of the Taj Mahal took roughly 12 years to complete, and the remaining parts of the complex took an additional 10 years and were completed in order of minarets, mosque, and jawab and gateway. And indeed, you're probably wondering what the Taj Mahal is, what the Taj Mahal looks like. Later on, of course, we're going to be giving you the images of that mausoleum so that you appreciate the diversity of mausoleums, what they are and what they represent. The total cost of the Taj Mahal at the time was estimated to be 32 million Indian rupees, which is around 52.8 billion Indian rupees today. And that, in United States dollar terms, is 827 million US dollars, of at least by 2015 estimates. However, of course, our mausoleum is going to be a hell of a lot less than that. A 30-day mausoleum, something just at least dignified to remember the founding father, in which his body will be interred, but indeed his legacy will not be in that mausoleum, because his legacy lives on. On the right there is the wall to a house belonging to Philip Chiangwa. And you may recall that Philip Chiangwa was here on ZTN as a brother to the late founding president, and he was also giving us insight here with regards to the person that Robert Mugabe was, and also shedding light on the proceedings of the burial. So, as we said, we'll always be giving you up-to-date information with regards that funeral. Yesterday night, a whole host of leaders came from all over the world. The leader of the Sahrawi Republic arrived yesterday. We also had the president of Ethiopia arriving late last night, and we got pictures of that arrival. Actually, the ritual was people would arrive and get into the airport at Robert Gabriel Mugabe International Airport and sign the Book of Condolences as they bade farewell to a man they knew intimately in the corridors of power here in Africa. And as you heard, if you were following our coverage as Zimbabwe's television network, of course, a lot of people had a lot of rich stories to tell about the principles of Robert Gabriel Mugabe. Principles that, according, for example, to Arthur Tambara, for example, who said his principles may have gotten him into trouble, but he stood by his principles. And now we're seeing these images from the people who were expectant at the National Sports Stadium. Now, this is going to be a big funeral, and as we see the host delegation there with the Zimbabwean president arriving at the National Sports Stadium. So there are the images of the National Sports Stadium, where that body that we were trekking, that body that we were following, is headed for this giant of a funeral. Now we will take you back to the procession, where you will see them slowly making their way, of course, into the city. Now that is Borrowdale Road, and going back now to the podium as the government delegation takes its place. Zimbabwe's service chiefs there arriving for the funeral. These are men and indeed women who served under the auspices, under the eye of Robert Gabriel Mugabe. And that man in that procession, who people are eagerly awaiting, the man with that body in that hearse, is a man that, of course, took office here in Zimbabwe in 1980, and for 37 years ran the country, now approaching the intersection there with Harare Drive. A very interesting little road that pretty much runs around almost the whole circumference of the city. So there we have images of the foreign dignitaries that are there for the funeral, for the giant funeral, the main funeral for the late Robert Mugabe. In the run-up to this funeral, Zimbabweans from all walks of life, of course, got the opportunity to bid farewell as well to their former leader at Rufaro Stadium at two separate parades that were held, one yesterday and another the day before. And of course, some of these foreign dignitaries already have paid a courtesy call on the presidency in Zimbabwe, but others had not, of course, understandably, because of the times that they arrived, a lot of them jetting in rather late last night. So some will be a fresh hello, and others will be welcome. Back to the entourage there, now making its way down Borodale Road. Of course, this broadcast is in conjunction and proudly sponsored by Nyarazo Funeral Services. So the crowds are making their way into the National Sports Stadium, and certainly by the time that body arrives, that place is expected to be packed to capacity. It is a stadium that was commissioned in the heart of the 80s and was built through the partnership of the Zimbabwean government then under Robert Mugabe, and indeed the nation of China. China also represented here at the funeral because there's been this very close relationship, obviously, between the nation of China and Zimbabwe. And you will recall that at a certain time, there was this look-east policy where the Zimbabwean government deliberately forged even closer ties with China and the eastern policies, eastern countries rather. So that's there is what is known as Sem Levy's village to the right. And Pomona to your left. And continuously, as we see motorists ceding their positions on the roads in honor of that procession. And yet again, we see members of the apostolic faith sector, a very close religious group, close to the heart of former President Robert Mugabe. And while he was Catholic, of course, he would always take time to visit them, to worship with them. And there were quite a number of giggles within society as he'd cede those suits and ties for the frocks that they wear, for the garments that they wear. One of the very rare moments when you'd see him out of his normal formal clothing. Just left those images from Borrowdale. They were now approaching Borrowdale Racecourse, and yes, Zimbabwe has got quite a celebrated equestrian society. Time and again, of course, former President Robert Mugabe, even in his time as Prime Minister, would grace Borrowdale Racecourse. There were quite a number of races that he would attend. And earlier on, I alluded to the fact that there were quite a number of leaders who were buried in mausoleums, and there we're seeing images of leaders that were buried in mausoleums. We've seen Levi Mwanawasa's one, Laurent Desiré Kabila from the DRC, Hastings Kamuzu Banda from Malawi. We've got Michael Sata there from Zambia. And those are some of the examples, of course, of mausoleums and leaders around Africa, at least, who are buried or are interred in mausoleums. Now that is Borrowdale Racecourse proper that is passing through. We still have quite a celebrated racing society in Zimbabwe, a horse racing society and a horse racing culture, a culture that he also celebrated and was a part of in his lifetime. Back to the world of the equestrians right there. We heard the burial has been postponed, and it will take a whole 30 days to complete the grave construction. And yesterday, chiefs visited the burial place, and later today, the body will be taken to his rural home in Zimba communal lands, Kutama, where, of course, people were waiting for him. As dignitaries continue to arrive for that funeral. Scenes there from the National Sports Stadium, where we see members of the military waiting for that parade Of course, there was also a lot of questions with regards the gun salute, but then a gun salute and the last post are only played when somebody is actually buried. So according to Leo Mugabe, in a statement that he delivered last night, Leo Mugabe being, of course, the late former president's nephew and the family's official spokesperson, it is highly unlikely that we'll have that gun salute today. Now, what is the last post? Of course, the last post is either a bugle call, primarily within infantry or regiments, and is used at military funerals and ceremonies commemorating those who have been killed in war or notable people in government. And its duration typically varies from a little over 1 minute to nearly 3 minutes. And it is often followed by that rouse, or less usually the réveillé. And talking of the bugle, that boring old instrument, President Robert Mugabe in his infancy actually used to play the bugle as an instrumentalist, and just a couple of years ago, in 2016, he actually got a gift of a bugle to remind him of that life that he used to live in the past when he used to play the bugle. So we're still on Borrowdale Road there. We've just passed that intersection with Churchill. And that road will take that change that I was talking about yesterday, had you been following proceedings with us, where it will all of a sudden become, I arguably think, the shortest road in Zimbabwe, one known as Chancellor Avenue. And Chancellor Avenue has Zimbabwe House and State House flanking it, the official residence of the head of state and government. And at one time it housed two leaders. On one hand, the first ceremonial president, Kenyan President on one hand, and Prime Minister Robert Gabriel Mugabe on the other. So technically, as they come down here to Chancellor Avenue, that's yet another homecoming and a farewell to a home. That there to the right is the King George VI, or now Josiah Magama Tongogara military establishment. To the left now, that is St. George's, a very highly reputed Catholic-run institution. And that's a school that was also very close to Robert Gabriel Mugabe, where he would go as a parent because his sons were educated there at one time. And now, this is Chancellor Avenue. You're going to see just a set of traffic lights. Those will obviously signal the arrival into Chancellor Avenue. And Chancellor Avenue is, of course, where State House is and where Zimbabwe House is. That is the seat, that official residence of the Zimbabwean leadership. Very close and perhaps to your 10 Downing Street, for example. And it is a sentimental place because that played home to Robert Mugabe for quite a while as Prime Minister and indeed as President. And it is there that he resided for quite a while with his first wife, Sarah Francesca Sally Hayfron Mugabe. And that is Chancellor Avenue as they just passed those traffic lights. Very high security area, that. And I'll tell you that Zimpaper's television network is giving you a very unique feed because you hardly get visual images of Chancellor Avenue. Because it is a very high security area, you never whip out your camera. And seriously speaking, this is probably one of the very few rare images of Chancellor Avenue on film. And you are seeing them on Zimpaper's television network. And you can also get this unique feed on our pages on Facebook. We're also live on our website. And you can also follow updates that are being tossed time and again by our willing and able social media team on Twitter. This is Josiah Tongogara Street. And these are the avenues of Zimbabwe. To the left, of course, being the residence of the presidency. As we continue to see dignitaries arrive into that VIP tent, of course, for the funeral, being greeted there by the head of protocol, the chief of protocol for the presidency. Munyaradzi Kajese. And you just saw there snippet of people celebrating with that flag. Of course, celebrating because this is a life worth celebrating. Thabo Mbeki arriving there, a very key broker when tensions had mounted in the Republic of Zimbabwe after a hardly fought and contentious 2008 election, when brother could not see eye to eye with brother. That man there, then leading South Africa, and then coming later as a broker, Thabo Mbeki brought peace and harmony to the nation of Zimbabwe. You may want to know that to the left of your screen, that is where Harare Sports Club is. And Harare Sports Club actually houses the cricket grounds. To your right, that set of flats is called Calder Gardens. Quite a stately set of flats. And cricket is important because it was a sport that Robert Gabriel Mugabe loved. It was a sport that he was a patron of. He was a patron of Zimbabwe cricket, Zim cricket, ZC. And at one time he even said he wished all the people in Zimbabwe played cricket because cricket is a gentleman's game and he wanted us to become a nation of gentlemen. Must have been pretty upset because we were lazy with regards playing cricket. And all this is image coming from across our city of Zimbabwe, as today, finally, we get to see the people coming together, kings and vagabonds, princes and paupers, to celebrate the life of Robert Gabriel Mugabe at this epic funeral that is being held at the National Sports Stadium. Now, who is Robert Mugabe? He is many things to many different people, but he was the man who helped usher in freedom into the nation of Zimbabwe in 1980, largely credited for having one of the nations with the highest literacy rates in Africa and indeed the world. Born in 1924 in Zimba communal lands, Kutama, to Gabriel and Bona. He is father to 3 surviving children, Bona named after his mother, Robert after him, and Bellarmine named after Robert Bellarmine, who was, of course, a key person in Catholicism. And you may know that indeed he was raised as a staunch Catholic, and there are angels in his family: Raphael, Michael, Gabriel. And Blessing Nazi is at the National Sports Stadium for us to tell us what is happening there and to give us an update of the place where the body is being eagerly expected. And Blessing, if you can hear me, what is going on? What is the ambience? And please give us an update.
So much, Robert. It's a very good morning. It's sunny Saturday morning right here in Harare. We're at the National Sports Stadium, the giant 60,000-seater stadium, and mourners are still trickling in. Most of the bays have been taken up, but it's quite an energetic atmosphere. Just as you can hear, people are singing and in a celebratory mood. We have seen the arrival of foreign delegates coming in, amongst them the former president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki. We do have a program that is ongoing. We have also just behind me 8 regiments taken from the Zimbabwe National Army, the Air Force, the Zimbabwe Prisons and Correctional Services, as well as the Zimbabwe Republic Police, and we will see inspection of the Guard of Honor. The VIP section is mainly manned by ministers, former ministers, as well as diplomats. I've seen the Japanese ambassador is here. I've seen the youth secretary of the MDC, Tererai Obeistole, is here. The ZANU-PF Youth Secretary Louis Matutu is here. The former Minister of Health, Dr. David Parenyatwa, is also here, amongst many delegates. I've also seen Comrade Chinotimba also in attendance.
Thank you, Blessing. But also I can see that while people seem to be mourning the life of this great man, there seems to be a lot of celebration, celebrating his life. Tell us about that. What are they celebrating? What did he leave the people of Zimbabwe? What legacy are they celebrating?
Definitely, they are celebrating, obviously, the impact that this man had on Africa. 40 years at the helm is a long time, and the impact that he had as a Pan-Africanist is really, non-deniable. And you can see from the attendance that we have here of foreign dignitaries, representatives from Lesotho, from Rwanda, the Sahrawi Republic, President Uhuru Kenyatta is also here. We really just to give their thanks for the role that this man played. One man who was a voice for Africa, certainly giving credit to the people of Zimbabwe for this son of the soil. And Robert, if you see also behind me, we do have the 3 cannons on standby. this will be to institute the 21 gun salute that is slated for later this afternoon. So we do have speeches that are also lined up. As you can hear, the crowd is just eccentric. We're just noticing the arrival of a former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, who was also an African Union chairperson at one point in time. So we do have lined up on the program to actually give speeches. President Theodore Obiang Nguema Basogo of Equatorial Guinea, Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta is also going to be giving a speech. The South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, in his capacity as the head of state of South Africa and also as the chairperson of the African Union.
Well, thank you, Blessing. We're going to obviously be coming back to you to give us updates, and I will say you're looking very, very immaculate, dressed dapper, and you're also celebrating the life of your former president. And now we are seeing images there of what is a mausoleum.
Very true. Thank you so much.
Perhaps we can now get to appreciate what a mausoleum is.
His Excellency Jacob Zuma.
As they approach the National Sports Stadium. And that's his former president, Jacob Zuma of South Africa, coming to bid farewell to a former colleague in the art of statecraft. Jay-Z there saying hello to Festus Mogae. Hello, my old friend. And that is the entrance to the National Sports Stadium. And that is where everybody is converged, awaiting the arrival of that casket, of that man, to say farewell to one of Africa's greatest luminaries. So they've entered the complex from the Zimbabwe end, slowly coming in, because there's need for closure. There's need for this ceremony to be held, because our mortality demands of us that we go through these rituals, each and every one of us, to lie down to breathe our last, to say farewell, and then have people bear their eyes upon us as we lie lifeless, that they may also celebrate and reminisce about our existence in whatever life will have been granted, whatever length. And this length has been 95. This cricket lover will indeed appreciate that he's had a very good innings at 95. He at one time remarked that he wanted to hit a century and no more. At 5 short, this batsman indeed will not fault his innings. We don't know whether he was run out or stumped, but he would be happy at that innings because everybody else around him, those people are happy with those innings. They're happy with 95. 95 all out, perhaps, but his legacy will never be stumped. He said. That perhaps is just as good. And there is Zimbabwe's television network being followed by the hearse. What do you know? And that is beauty, Joao. The beauty to your right. So all this is unfolding at the National Sports Stadium, where people are gathered, of course, to bid farewell to one of Zimbabwe's gallant sons and a founding father who's left a legacy of hard work, energy, and tireless dedication. His success indeed is a Zimbabwean dream come true. That is Robert Mugabe. He built a people of power, a nation of praise that, of course, will move in this land by the spirit of patriotism and glorify the name of their nation. Robert Mugabe was always bound to leave quite a legacy, quite a name. And today, leaders from all over are gathered to say farewell to that man and really reflect on the legacy that he left for his country. He wasn't a perfect person, says Arthur Tambara, when he was here, because nobody is. But what he left us is invaluable, and that is what we need to build upon. Whatever errors may have happened in the man's life, says Arthur Tambara, we should pick up from those and learn from those and fix those. And we should take that legacy that he left us, we should take that inheritance that he left us of hard work, energy, tireless dedication, of education, and we should go with it forward and change. So we were seeing their images of more mausoleums, because today that's a word that Zimbabweans are learning about. Robert Mugabe was always a stubborn teacher, we were told. He's teaching us even as he lies lifeless. He's teaching us what a monument called a mausoleum is. Other examples of mausoleums. There goes. His shall take 30 days to complete. that is a mausoleum in the United States of America. Ulysses S. Grant, there, former president of the Republic, of course, the United States of America. So, African leaders also lie in mausoleums. Here's one for Levi Mwanawasa, former president of Zambia, Laurent Desire Kabila, the former president of the DRC, Hastings Kamuzu Banda, the former president of Malawi, Michael Sata, also of Zambia. Frederick Chiluba is also in a mausoleum in Zambia. I think Zambians love mausoleums and know how to spell that word, because a lot of people are learning how to spell that word, Googling it, finding out what it is that shall be happening for 30 days when that building will be constructed and erected to the memory of Robert Gabriel Mugabe. And indeed, we'll be bringing you more images close up with what is happening at the National Sports Stadium. And Robert Mugabe did not belong to Zimbabwe, as of course mentioned at the memorial service in South Africa held by the economic freedom fighters. He was a man of the continent. He has been stolen from Zimbabwe because of his legacy to the rest of Africa. And as such, not only Zimbabweans can speak and superintend over his death, we understand that other heads of state and former heads of state from around the world and around this continent are going to be giving their words, their final speeches, at least at this occasion, as they bid farewell to Robert Gabriel Mugabe. So many heads of state, many luminaries are expected to also speak at this funeral, apart from, of course, the official Zimbabwean speaking delegation. We saw there Jacob Gedleyihlekisa Zuma coming through. We saw Thabo Mbeki, a very close friend, coming through. And of course, we talk about others speaking at this funeral. But Robert Mugabe himself was known as quite a speaker in his time, a very gifted orator, and sometimes pretty abrasive and straight up, which is what former Deputy Prime Minister Arthur Oliver Guseni Mtambara mentioned the other day. So as time goes by, of course, I'm going to also be giving you some of these quotations so that we reminisce and remember the person that was Robert Mugabe, the man who said, "So, Blair, you keep your England and let me keep my Zimbabwe." We're going to be having those quotes and others to remember the man that was Robert Mugabe, the man that spoke and spoke from the heart and spoke eloquently and really did not mince his words. As more dignitaries arrive, of course, let us reminisce on some of those quotations. On imperialism, Robert Mugabe once said, "Africa must revert to what it was before the imperialists divided it. These are artificial divisions, which we, in our Pan-African concept, will seek to remove." And that this was said at a speech in Salisbury, then Salisbury, now Harare, in 1962. And because of reconciliation and his policy of reconciliation in 1980, he said to the white population of Zimbabwe at a ZANU-PF rally in 1980, "Stay with us. please remain in this country and constitute a nation based on national unity. And there we see Rupia Banda, the former Zambian president there. He's popularly known as RB, and he's come to say farewell to RG. And there's Jerry Rawlings of Ghana, arrived yesterday, and we got some word from him. There he is. Of course, Ghana being a very close country to the heart of Robert Gabriel Mugabe. Those two old boys, good old boys, were very close to Robert Gabriel Mugabe. In Ghana, of course, Robert Mugabe cut his political teeth, as it were. And that is where he married his first wife, Sarah Francesca Sally Hayfron, as he was a teacher at Takoradi in Ghana. And he was a lover of Nkrumah and Nkrumahism, as it were. And that man there helped liberate the nation of Namibia, a brother nation. That is Sam Nujoma. In fact, to his name and to his legacy is a street named here in Harare and unveiled by Robert Gabriel Mugabe. And this is where our offices are. This is where this broadcast is coming from. And behind Sam Nujoma, also with a cane in his hand, is another former Namibian president, Hifikepunye Pohamba. And we were showing you mausoleums, and we showed you one belonging to Laurent Desire Kabila. And so earlier on, I actually even saw that man, Joseph Kabila, that's the son of Laurent Desire Kabila, very close to Robert Gabriel Mugabe. That man even professed to be a son to Robert Gabriel Mugabe after his father passed on, and he took over the reins in the RDC, République démocratique du Congo. And that man carries the name of the continent, the name of freedom, Uhuru Kenyatta. He's the son of another former president, Jomo Kenyatta, a founding father, one who occupies that list alongside people like Robert Mugabe, Kwame Nkrumah, Nelson Mandela. And Uhuru Kenyatta, of course, celebrated the life of Robert Mugabe by also declaring quite a decent time of mourning and reflecting Robert Mugabe. Kenya is a very close ally of the Republic of Zimbabwe. Indeed, many people got to forge even stronger relations with the nation of Zimbabwe during the tenure of Robert Mugabe, because whenever they felt aggrieved, as was said by Professor Arthur Tambara yesterday, whenever people felt aggrieved, and wanted to have a word or two with Western nations or more powerful nations, while teachers would write in red in your book, "See me," African leaders would go and see Robert and say, "Can you have a word with the United Kingdom or the United States?" And then he would say, "Say no more." So the casket is not within a shot right now, and we cannot give you the images of the casket at the moment. But certainly that shall come as soon as we get within eyeshot. We shall be giving you those images. And Teodoro Obiang Nguema of Equatorial Guinea, who arrived yesterday, is now making his way into the National Sports Stadium. He's in the stadium already. He's making his way onto the podium. That apparently is Mugabe's best friend. But then if you ask a million people, they'll still tell you they were Robert Mugabe's best friend. Who wouldn't want to have a best friend of that caliber? And so today's broadcast is proudly sponsored there by Nyarozo Group. And while Blessing was looking dapper, so am I, thanks to Janjan. Now that man is Joaquim Chissano, the former president of Mozambique. He took over the reins after the tragic passing on in a plane crash of Samora Moses Michel. Now, interesting fact about this man is that he was actually the best man at Gabriel Mugabe's wedding in April of 1996 with Grace Ntombizodwa Marufu. That's the best man, and he was obviously going to come. And what loyalty. People who stand by you in your greatest feats, in your happiest moments, on your happiest days, as you marry your sweetheart. They come and accompany you when you go on your final journey to meet your ancestors, to meet your Maker, to rest. So we had RB, we have RGM lying here, bringing people together, and that man is KK, Kenneth Kaunda, founding president of the Republic of Zambia. advanced in age, indeed, and you certainly can tell, but he's not going to miss a moment to say farewell to his friend, and he's holding that trademark white handkerchief, a handkerchief that says, "I am KK." He's a beauty of a soul indeed if you sit down with him and have a word. And that is one of his boys, the men who took on after him. That is Edgar Chagwa Lungu. Now he is the current president of the Republic of Zambia. Look at how he carries himself. Following in after his father. Following in after his father. Making the nation of Zambia proud and representing the nation of Zambia in one of the biggest funerals in Africa. Celebrating one of the greatest men in Africa. Now those are old boys meeting because they were actually in the same class in Zambia. Now, having gone through law school together, they meet, and Chagwa, of course, accompanying his father, the father of his nation, Kenneth Kaunda, and representing his country as the head of state and government. You're not going to sit with your father, they say. Come here. That is the iconic badge of the Zimbabwe Republic Police just coming into the frame there. And we shall resume with images from the National Sports Stadium, and just after this little breather.
Losing the person I loved the most was one of the hardest things I've ever had to face.
And because I was away from home, it made it much more difficult.
That is when I saw how important it is to have a friend.
A friend to ease the burden.
A friend to take care of things when you can't.
A friend to help you get home.
From around the continent of Africa, Kamuzu Banda of Malawi, Michael Sata of Zambia. Earlier we saw one of Levi Mwanawasa. Let's take you back to the National Sports Stadium, of course, where all the action is happening today at the moment, where the funeral of Robert Gabriel Mugabe is taking place, as they get a bit of entertainment from the choirs. I'm pretty sure they were following our coverage yesterday as people were talking here and there about the choirs, and I'm pretty sure they've gotten a very great choir to sing for you today. We'll probably get some audio.
Members of the security services, I'm instructed to move in. Services from Zimbabwe, members of the security services, defense forces, police, prison and correctional services from this state. May you please rise so that we can allow family members to take their positions. Thank you. Excellency Yao Lorengo.
There we see Joao Lourenço, the head of state of Angola, coming in to pay his last respects with, alongside his fellow leaders of the African continent.
Thank you very much, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we announce the arrival of the President of the Republic of Mozambique. His Excellency.
Rich in minerals, perhaps. That is why he's been welcomed by Mines Minister Winston Chitando. That is the Mozambican leader, Filipe Nyusi, arriving. A very rich history between Zimbabwe and Mozambique. ever since their independence, and really playing host to the liberation struggle of Zimbabwe. Particularly, of course, in Chimoyo, where we as a nation were housed, fighting for independence, fighting for freedom. And that was the host nation, loving us as exiles and refugees, making sure that we took over the reins of power. Those are the godfathers of Zimbabwe. Those are the midwives of Zimbabwe, giving birth to this nation. We all have pieces of Mozambicanism within our DNA. Heads of state continue to trickle in. That curiously looks like the president of Ethiopia. Of course, we will be able to tell when we get closer. Yes, indeed. She arrived late last night.
We announced the arrival of the President of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia, His Excellency Sahrawi Republic.
So the Ethiopian president jetted in last night, late last night. Couldn't miss it, couldn't miss this occasion, because of course we also have a very rich and beautiful, powerful history with the people of Ethiopia. Robert Mugabe loved freedom, and Abyssinia said no, no to colonization. That's Hagi Geingob. His big brother, his father, arrived earlier. That is the president of Namibia. We are live, of course, on our Facebook platforms. We are live on our website. And you can catch up with our updates, our regular updates, of course, on our Twitter handle. Today we're powered and partnered, of course, by Nyarazo Group and Janjan. That is President Peter Mutharika of Malawi, and if I'm not mistaken, of course, his brother Bingwa Mutharika, who was also the head of state of Malawi, is interred in a mausoleum. When Bingwa Mutharika, the late, married his sweetheart, Madame Karista, Robert Mugabe jetted in to share that moment with them. Tragically, of course, he passed away almost exactly a year later. Those two wedded, of course, on the 17th of April. The day before the Zimbabwean independence commemorations. Peter Mutharika. Malawi has got another bit of history with Zimbabwe. Once forming one federal country under the auspices of colonization, Northern Rhodesia, Southern Rhodesia, and Nyasaland, which today respectively are Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Malawi, rather. We have a lot of Zimbabweans of Malawian descent, of course, because of that beautiful relationship coming from that federal period. Which is probably why Robert Mugabe wanted to wreak havoc on the continent and tear down all those walls called national frontiers to make us all one people.
Ladies and gentlemen, we announce the arrival of the President.
So this has been, as I've always termed it, a long sunset. Now let's just recap of how we got to this place. Of course, we came from the Blue Roof, Borrowdale Drive, Crow Hill. That's pretty fast. That's faster than the motorcade took. But of course, that's how we came from the Blue Roof, snaked our way, Crow Hill, Borrowdale Road, Josiah Tongogara Road, and now we are here at the National Sports Stadium. That is Brahim Ghali of the Sahrawi Republic, Arab Republic. A lot of people would probably not know of the leader or leadership of the Sahrawi Arab Republic because it's still battling to get its sovereignty as probably Africa's last colony as it is understood. Robert Mugabe stood shoulder to shoulder with the people of the Sahrawi Arab Republic, fighting for their sovereignty, losing friends, particularly amongst the Moroccans. Once got a very cold reception from the Moroccan monarch after he pronounced that Morocco should not be readmitted into the African Union by virtue of its tenuous relationship with the Sahrawi Arab Republic. But he comes here as a head of state and government, fully recognized by the government of Zimbabwe, because the government of Zimbabwe, the people of Zimbabwe, value sovereignty, self-determination and self-government. And that is yet again another legacy that was left for us by Robert Gabriel Mugabe. Certainly a man who really was standing astute and saying people should have whatever shackles that are bound around their hands stripped off, ripped off, broken. An embrace to Dr. Olusegun Obasanjo. The world, some people will also be receiving this link either live or delayed from several partners of ours, including, of course, the Voice of America. And of course, there's entertainment galore there from choirs at the National Sports Stadium. Now, people have been asking, of course, on our handles, on our Twitter, on our Facebook, was Robert Gabriel Mugabe not a Catholic? Why are we not hearing from Buya Ana singing? That's a question that, of course, dropped on our Facebook page. Well, the thing is, he was a Catholic, this man. But today we're not burying a Catholic, we're burying a Zimbabwean who belonged to everybody. The Methodists, the Anglicans, the Catholics, the Reformed Church, the Apostolic faith. So they're all wanting to converge and sing a song of celebration for a man they knew, loved, and lived with. Of course, he came much earlier in 1924. And we are not the only ones who were at the funeral. You saw that chap. I'm presuming it's a fellow, wanting to have a bird's eye view of the funeral. Now that is a bird's eye view if ever there was one. Of course, now we're getting images from behind the scenes, outside the frontiers of the National Sports Stadium. There's a flurry, there's life, there's activity, and you are there seeing these visuals. That man is Cyril Ramaphosa, the current sitting president of the Republic of South Africa, and arguably the closest relative we have as a nation, because that is our largest trading partner as Zimbabwe. He is the man who is running Zimbabwe's back garden. We go to our backyard very frequently, time and time again. You seem to get a feeling that they are in haste. They have to be here because this is an important occasion. It's an occasion not to be missed. And because it shouldn't be missed, we don't want you to miss it, which is why you're watching us, which is why this feed is available on our website, on our Facebook page, and indeed, we're giving you constant and consistent updates on our Twitter handle. Just perhaps a bit of an insider update. Those comments that you're giving us, indeed, we're taking into cognizance, and they're being presented to us courtesy of our social media team, Mbonisi Anganani, who's really on the pulse, making sure that whatever concerns you have, whatever visuals and images you want to see, indeed are fed to you. As Cyril takes his place, perhaps we could take a bit of a breather, and we'll be back with these images as life commences to celebrate that life of Robert Gabriel Mugabe. Don't go away.
Losing the person I loved the most was one of the hardest things I've ever had to face.
And because I was away from home, it made it much more difficult.
That is when I saw how important it is to have a friend.
A friend to ease the burden.
A friend to take care of things when you can't.
A friend to help you get home.
Welcome back to Zim Papers Television Network, where we're actually giving you images live from National Sports Stadium here in Harare, Zimbabwe, where we are having the official funeral of the late founding president of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Robert Gabriel Mugabe. Now, Robert Mugabe died on the 6th of September at Gleneagles Hospital in Singapore, where he was receiving medical attention. Of course, in the early hours of that day, his body was flown back home last Wednesday, where we received him as ZTN, and we've been tracking his progress as we take him to his final resting place and bid him farewell. Of course, Nyaradzo Funeral Home is in partnership with us here on ZTN. Nyaradzo Funeral Assurances standing side by side with us. Of course, we're also proudly supported by Janjam. We said this is a celebration of a life, and indeed, because of that, I suppose we should also be singing and dancing to the legacy of former President Robert Mugabe, and that is exactly what is happening. Let us get some audio feed from the stadium to hear a band that is actually celebrating the life of Robert Gabriel Mugabe in song and sound.
Now we are seeing the funeral cortege marching on parade, led by His Excellency the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Comrade Mnangagwa. As they march on parade, the order of march is as follows. In front is the casket with the pallbearers, followed by family members. Thereafter, we have His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, and Amai.
So now we see images there from just outside or within the belly of the National Sports Stadium, as the body of the late Robert Gabriel Mugabe is now being accompanied into the main auditorium. That's the body that people are waiting for. That's the casket that people are waiting for. And indeed, this is the moment that everybody has been waiting for, where we are now actually seeing the actual procession, the actual commencement of the funeral. That body is now in the stadium. The people have stood in honor of their late founding president. This is the moment, this is the time, this is the beginning of, sadly, the end.
As they march on parade, they march between two rows of sentries who have their weapons pointed downwards, a position called reverse arms, which is a token of respect. Tokubirawo bese bari kuyimba mu Harare, ku materraces bese bari kuyimba tokubirawo mu Harare, and may we all rise as the cortege marches on parade. Ngatisimuke itese. The pallbearers are 3-star generals from the uniformed forces. bid farewell to gallant sons and daughters of Zimbabwe. Today, the funeral of that we are witnessing is the place of his life and the highest form of respect to the late former President of the Republic of Zimbabwe. Now we are witnessing the whole position of the casket. This is a unique funeral event and the highest form of respect according to the late former President of the Republic of Zimbabwe. One of the outstanding features of this parade is that all the Equatorial rifles, namely the details along the route, and we also have the 21 line salute by Casket.
And there are those images of a grief-stricken family, a family that has lost a father, a friend. That was the widow, Grace Ntombizodwa Marufu Mugabe. Arm in arm there with her son, her youngest, his youngest, Bellarmine Chatunga. While we celebrate, we mourn. And written in his eyes is pain, is loss, is suffering. Because this is an epic moment when you get to accept the fact that you have suffered a blow, you have suffered a loss. While many remember Robert Mugabe as their leader, as their friend, as their president, and even as their foe, those people, before all else, remember a father.
Let us remain standing while His Excellency the President and the President will take their seats, and the bereaved family members also take their seats.
And there, the family are getting up to the podium, taking their places. And that tall, towering man will have to now become just that, the man. Robert Jr., who ought now to take on the mantle and steer the family forward. He, alongside his rather empowered, down-to-earth, and much beloved sister, Bona. There's something about Bona that is pretty remarkable. People speak of her as if they know her because of her demeanor, down to earth, calm, composed. And there she is, Grace, and right behind her, Bona, the daughter, the mother, and the friend to Robert. He spoke glowingly of her, and especially the fact that he seemed to be the one who took that chip from that old block, the chip of loving education, education, education. And certainly, now the event begins in earnest as the people have taken their places. It's remarkable how indeed he is an African icon, because that picture is not diluted. It is marked by notable African luminaries. Arthur Tambara said it yesterday, the West will not celebrate this person. The West see trouble when they see Robert Mugabe. But these guys, well, they see a contemporary, a friend, a voice. And they have come to bury that voice, but they have not come to bury that message, because that message lives on.
May I invite the Permanent Secretary for Home Affairs and Cultural Heritage, Mr. Dennis Machia, to the podium. Say.
That is the image there of the casket, which has been draped with that famous, beautiful flag, the flag that represents the Zimbabwean people. And indeed, Zimbabwean people and people who relate to this great nation are all over the world, which is why we are streaming all over the world, and which is why we've got eyeballs from all over the world. We're also streaming on a Voice of America, who are also picking up our feed. And we've got eyeballs from even down under, where we're getting feedback on our social media handles with, in Australia, Chipoekare saying she's following these proceedings. It's probably very, very early or very late there down under. But Chipoekare says she appreciates the coverage that we're giving, and she's following us on ZTN. Now we'll be getting audio from the proceedings as that great national anthem is played.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Comrade E.D. Mnangagwa. To commence our program, allow me, Your Excellency, to invite the Minister of Home Affairs and Cultural Heritage, Ambassador Comrade
Uniting people, of course, is Robert Mugabe, and there we see the leader of the opposition, Nelson Chamisa. We also saw Sekurutau, another leader of a political party. Now a clearer vision there of Nelson Chamisa, the leader of the opposition movement for democratic change alliance. And that curiously looks like Pelekezela Mpho. And certainly it is, just behind former Deputy President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Ubabaga Siqoko Qele.
Over the untimely departure of our founding father, it is befitting that we gather here to pay our last respects and pay tribute to the former President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Comrade Robert Mugabe. Your Excellency, before the proceeding with our program, allow me to invite the Minister of Religion, Father Muguti, to lead us in prayer. Your Excellency, sir.
The people of Zimbabwe and beyond, at this time when we mourn the great son of the soil and we are engulfed in confusion, we want to ask the Lord to help us and guide us and console us. So allow me to invite the Lord through His word. We shall take our word from Luke chapter 24, verses 30 and following. And behold, two of them went that same day to the village called Emmaus, which was from Jerusalem, about 7 miles, and they talked together of all these things which had happened. And it came to pass that while they communed together and reasoned, Jesus himself drew near and went with them. But their eyes were hidden from knowing him. And he said to them, "What is it that you are discussing to one another as you walk and are sad?" And one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered and said to him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem that has not known these things which have come to pass in these days?" And he said to them, "What things?" And they said, "Concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, a mighty indeed prophet. And the word of God was always on his lips. And how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death and had him crucified. We had trusted that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. But now, it's 3 days since these things have happened. And the women of our community made us astonished when they went to the sepulchre early in the morning, and they did not find his body there. And they came back saying they have seen the vision of angels which told them that he was alive. And he said to them, "You fools, slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not Jesus had to suffer these things so that he could enter into his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he expounded unto them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. And they drew close the village where they were going, and he intended to proceed, but they constrained him, saying, "Stay with us, for it is getting dark, and the day is fast spent." And it came to pass, as he sat down with them, he took bread and opened and blessed it, and broke it and gave it to them, and their eyes were opened, and they knew that it was Jesus, and he disappeared. And from that moment, they went back to Jerusalem. My dear brothers and sisters in the Lord, during this time of mourning, as the nation is involved in confusion and sorrow, deep sorrow, we ask the Lord that he accompanies us in our journey, so that our eyes can be opened, so that our minds can also be opened, so that we can appreciate and understand what is happening to our nation. You watch these two disciples, they are frustrated on what has happened, and they are going back to their village. They are running away from Jerusalem, because in their minds, Jerusalem had become a place of horror, a place of terror. But when they met Jesus along the way, their eyes were opened. And when their eyes were opened, they regained the confidence, they regained the strength, and they went back to Jerusalem. And this is what we want to ask the Lord to help us, so that we may appreciate that being part of this great nation, this is where we belong. We are not to move away from our nation. And the man that we are giving to God this afternoon, the man that is before us, is a man who stood for the principles, fundamental principles that govern his leadership, that this is our motherland. That's why we call him the son of the soil. And we need to have that conviction that this is our motherland. This is our Jerusalem. We have no other Jerusalem. This is where we belong. And therefore, let us pray. Mwari baba vedu, tauya pamberi pechigaro chenyu nemoyo yakakotama sevana venyu vane chivimbo mamuri, tichikumbira kubatsirwa nekunyaradzwa nemi. Tinokupai rutendo norukudzo nembiri pamusoro perudo rwenyu kwatiri. Tenzi ndimi makavamba basa iri ratiunganidza pano kubva musi wamakatora Robert Gabriel kuti ave paderi nopasta. Chitungamiriraiwo basa iri namweya wedu mutsvene rigosvika kumugomo wakanaka. Tinokutendai nechipo chavamugabe, icho chamakanga makatipa sevana venyika yedu yeZimbabwe. Makatiwanisa mukana wokugoverana nemuranda wenyu uyo zvipo zvamakanga makamupa semutungamiriri wenyika ino, sasoro jena wenyika yeAfrica nepasi rose. Makamuwanisawo mukana wokukushandirai sokugona kwake achikurarama pasi pano. Tenzi tinonyengeterera mhuri yake, mudzimai wake pamwe nevana vake neveukama neshamwari nenyika yose. Imi nyangoni nyamuzvira tsitsi, ngavawanirwe nyaradzi yezvirokwazvo inobva kwamuri. Mweya wenyu munyaradzi ngaatore nekurapa maronda akasakiswa norufu rwaRobert. Tibatsireiwo kuti tinzwisise kuti rufu hakusi kurova asi kushandurwa. Tinonyengeterera zvizvarwa zvenyika ino yeZimbabwe pamwe naavo vose vane upenyu hwaakabata, vaiva nechitarisiro kwaari. chivaindimi mubati weurongwa huno kuzadzikisere muzita renyu. Tenzi imi nyamudzira tsitsi, regerereiwo Robert zvitadzo zvake zvose, mukarangarira zvivi zvedu hapana angararama pamberi penyu. Mukati mucherechedze nokuronda zvatinokukanganisirai, chokwadi hapana angapunyuka kubva muhasha dzenyu. Maziso edu azere misodzi, asi mwoyo yedu imi Mwari uzere tsitsi. Nokudaro tokuteterereiwo Baba kuti munzwirewo Robert mwana wenyu uyu tsitsi pane zvaakakutadzirai nezvaakatadzira nyika nevamwe vake mazuva ake okurarama pane rino pasi. Robert akavimba nemi samambo nomuponesi wake. Musamutonge muine hasha, musamurangewo mambo. Tinokutetererai kuti mumuwanisewo nzvimbo mumusha wenyu wokudenga. Ngaanyenyeredze kurangwa kupi nokupi kunouya mushure mekufa kwedu. NiMwari munogara muchitonga kwemisi isingaperi. Amen.
mukangoeresa zita rake nekubatisisa shoko rake nekurinzvera nekurirama nekufambamo munzira dzake mukangoeresa zita rake nekubatisisa shoko rake nekurinzvera nekurirama nekufambamo munzira dzake nekumira mumiri nekushingiri anokurwi zvaunoshuvi nekumira mumiri nekushingiri anokurwi zvaunoshuvi mukangoyeresa zita rake nekubatisisa shoko rake nekurinzvera nekurirama nekufambamo munzira dzake mukangoyeresa zita rake nekubatisisa shoko rake nekurinzvera nekurirama nekufambamo munzira dzake nekumira mumiri nekushingiri anokurwi iwe zvaunoshuvi
Thank you, choir. Your Excellency, in accordance with the program, a member of the family will now be given time to to address the mourners gathered here. May I therefore call upon the Mugabe family representative, Mr. Walter Chidakwa. Chidakwa, please.
Your Excellencies, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Comrade Emerson Dambuzo Mnangagwa, and the First Lady, Your Excellencies, heads of state and government from the many sister republics that have come to mourn with us today. Your Excellencies, former heads of state, friends to the late dear departed President Robert Mugabe, esteemed heads of delegations from the African Union and other African committees and associations. The former First Lady, Dr. Grace Mugabe, and the entire Mugabe family, allow me, on behalf of the family, first and foremost, to express our sincere, profound, and heartfelt gratitude to the government and people of Zimbabwe Your Excellency, to your colleagues who have come to mourn with you, to mourn with us. And as I make my statement, allow me to make an observation. When the remains of the former president arrived in the country, the crowds that gathered to welcome him into the country were indeed of unprecedented proportions. The crowds that lined the streets from Harare International Airport right into the city have never before been seen in this country. And I called it a genuine overflow of kindness. When President Mnangagwa announced the number of heads of state and former heads of state that were destined for Zimbabwe, I knew, we knew that our father was a revered and loved person. He worked well with you, heads of state and governments. and he never would have wanted anything done that was below par and below standard. And I know, because, yes, as a member of the family, for some time I was also in government. Our father had very strong family views. He set out after the liberation, the attainment of the liberation struggle, he set out to unite the family. To unite the family, not just the core family of the Mugabe, but proceeded to the extended family, to the Karigamombe family, to unite the Gushungos as a clan, and to ask them to love each other, to assist each other, empathize and sympathize with each other. And I say that for us, this was one of the greatest lessons that we must pass on to our own children. A lesson that he did not only practice at home. The language of unity and togetherness was his language. He detested tribalism. He wanted a nation that was united. He always recalled the fact that the struggle had been won because of the unity of the oppressed masses of Zimbabwe, not only because of one tribe or another. And so that unity and togetherness at family level and at the level of the state became one of the founding principles of our nation. And I hope, I have confidence that as we remember him, as we go through his memory, we recall his voice calling us to unity. We recall his voice bringing us together as a nation. Our father was very particular about the virtues of honesty and integrity. He taught us to be who you are, who we are, not to pretend to be what you are not. This was the motto of Kutama when it was established in 1912. Esse convideri, to be rather than to seem. And he taught us to be who we are. And we are proud, and I know that our family will preserve that education that we were given. He was an educationist. He taught you without you realizing that you are being taught. He educated his ministers. He taught them in class because he wanted them to be of a higher standard, of a higher quality, a higher caliber. And I have no doubt in my mind that this will never leave their memories. Your Excellencies, our father was about consistency. Bona Mugabe told me that her father said to her, I want you to be consistent, to do one thing and carry it to its final and logical conclusion, and not to hop from one thing to another and have many halves which will amount to nothing. And he gave her the example of how they, against all adversity during the liberation struggle, they, halfway through the struggle, were put in prison for 10 years. And yet, when they came out, not only did they get back to the task of completing and attaining liberation, but they intensified it until 1980. That is consistency. There were others who felt that the land reform program probably was not the right way to go. And he said, no, we have had this since the liberation struggle. It is one of the outstanding national questions of the day, and we must complete it. And it was carried out to its final and logical conclusion. He loved these people. He wanted them to have land, to have resources so that they would look after themselves. He knew that in the process of doing so, he would anger certain sections of our society. He knew. And yet, the burden of looking after his people told him that it was better for those other sections of the society to be angry while the greater generality of Zimbabweans benefited from the land reform program. He introduced indigenization and economic empowerment because he wanted his people to participate in the realization of economic development in Zimbabwe. And so we miss him already. We want to be with him. The mind knows that at 95, we at some point must go. And yet the heart says no. We would have wanted to have him. And this is why we mourn for him. We are touched by the support that we have received. And we are touched by the support that has come from the international community. And we hope that this will enable him to go away a happy man. I must say, and I spent lots of time with him. Towards the end of his life, he was a sad man. Sad, sad, sad man. He recalled quietly the journey that he had walked. A profound journey, a hard and excruciating journey. believe. Kushungo pachiorera vemushanji ndozvazvinoita vazvimba, ndozvazvinoita itai kuti nyika yenyu irambe ichienderera mberi. Batanidzai mhuri dzenyu, matirai mhuri yenyu, chengetai mhuri yenyu. I thank you, and I thank you most sincerely. As I alluded to earlier, Your Excellency, amongst us are heads of state, former heads of state, and heads of delegation who are here to pay their last respects to the founding father of our nation. Now that the family representative has addressed us, it is therefore befitting that these distinguished guests be accorded an opportunity to address the mourners, Your Excellency. May I therefore invite His Excellency Teodoro Obiang Nguema Basango, the President of Equatorial Guinea, to deliver his message. Your Excellency, sir.
Hello.
Su Excelencia Emerson Mnangagwa, Presidente de la República de Zimbabue y Presidente del Partido de SAN. Sus Excelencias, Jefes de Estados, eminentes líderes de la política africana y del mundo, distinguidas delegaciones, distinguida familia afligida, señoras, señores, estimado pueblo de Zimbabue.
Your Excellency, Mr. Emerson Mnangagwa, President of the Republic of Zimbabwe and President of the ZANU-PF political party. Your Excellencies, Heads of State and African political leaders of the world here present today, distinguished delegations here present, and most of all, the afflicted family members, esteemed people of Zimbabwe, ladies and gentlemen.
Hoy, África entera está en luto y triste porque ha perdido un luchador, un combatiente por la liberación y por la emancipación del continente africano.
Today, the world of Africa is mourning the loss of a great fighter, a worthy combatant of our causes in our continent.
Un icono y un líder panafricanista muy reconocido. Por este motivo, expresamos en este acto nuestro profundo dolor y consternación, nuestras condolencias y la solidaridad del pueblo de Guinea Ecuatorial por esta trágica muerte de nuestro gran líder, Su Excelencia Robert Gabriel Mugabe.
Therefore it is with a profound sorrow and consternation that we do express our condolence here today and that of the people of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea to you all for the tragic death of our great leader, Comrade Robert Gabriel Mugabe.
Un panafricanista luchador por la liberación del continente africano contra la ocupación colonialista, neocolonialista y el apartheid, a quien por causa natural ha muerto, la muerte le ha sorprendido el día 6 de este mes de septiembre.
A true Africanist icon for the liberation of the African continent against colonialism, neocolonialism, and apartheid, who, due to natural causes of life, passed away suddenly in Singapore on the 6th of this month of September.
África y el pueblo de Zimbabue acaba de perder un líder contemporáneo del siglo, defensor de la independencia, libertad y dignidad de los hombres, tanto en el interior de su país que donde quiera que estos derechos estuvieran violados. Promotor de la lucha contra la apartheid y defensor de los derechos soberanos del pueblo de Zimbabue.
Indeed, the whole of African continent in general, and particularly the people of Zimbabwe, have just lost a contemporary leader of this millennium, a true defender of independence, of freedom and human dignity all over the world. And wherever these dignities were being violated, and a strong defender of the sovereign rights of the people of Zimbabwe.
Sus ideales panafricanistas le sitúan en la lista de otros grandes líderes y luchadores de África como Olivie Tambo, Nelson Mandela, Kwame Nkrumah, Ahmed Sékou Touré, Gamal Abdel Nasser, Mohamed V de Marruecos, Patricio Lumumba, Samora Machel, Julius Nyerere, Kenneth Kaunda, Sam Nujoma, Eduardo dos Santos de Angola y otros tantos.
His great Pan-Africanist ideals places him amongst a long list of other great leaders and fighters for the liberation and struggle of Africa, among whom we find such great people as Oliver Tambo, Nelson Madiba Mandela, Kwame Nkrumah, Ahmed Sékou Touré, Gamal Abdel Nasser, Mohammed V of Morocco, Patricio Lumumba, Samora Machel, Julius Nyerere, Kenneth Kaunda, Sam Nujoma, Eduardo dos Santos, and many others.
La República de Guinea Ecuatorial, en particular, debe mucho al pueblo de Zimbabue gracias a la política panafricanista en materia de lucha para el mantenimiento de la paz y seguridad en África, la soberanía nacional y dignidad de los pueblos del presidente Gabriel Mugabe, y expresa su total apoyo y solidaridad al pueblo, gobierno de Zimbabue y al partido ZANU-PF por la alta valoración que a través de estas exequias expresa la inmortalidad de sus ideales y de su liderazgo como dignitario. Su idea debe conservar todo el continente africano.
The Republic of Equatorial Guinea is highly indebted to the people of Zimbabwe, thanks to the deeply rooted national sovereignty defense policies of the then President Robert Gabriel Mugabe. And while we remain ever grateful, we also express our complete support and solidarity to the people and government of Zimbabwe and the ZANU-PF political party for this great recognition which is being rendered here today, and which expresses and will give a lasting sense of immortality to the leadership status and policies of President Mugabe, whose ideals should be preserved by the entire African continent.
Es meritorio que el pueblo de Zimbabue y África reconozca a este predilecto líder político como héroe nacional.
Therefore, it will be a great honor and a laudable one for that matter, and especially for the people of Zimbabwe, to actually recognize and uphold the memories of this eminent political leader, son of the soil, as that of a national hero.
Finalmente, expreso nuestra solidaridad a la familia afligida y al pueblo de Zimbabue entero, con quienes compartimos estos momentos de dolor y tristeza por su muerte.
And finally, I once again express our sympathy and solidarity to the affected family members and to the people of Zimbabwe in general, with whom we share these sorrowful moments.
Que su alma descanse en paz del Señor. Muchas gracias.
May the Almighty God guard his soul and grant him eternal rest in peace. Thank you.
Can we please have a short music interlude? 2 seconds, please.
Your Excellency, it would appear the music interlude, they are not yet right. Your Excellency, allow me to express my gratitude to His Excellency Theodore Obiang Nguema Basago for his comforting words. In accordance with the program, Your Excellency, may I at this juncture invite His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, the President of Kenya, to deliver his message. Your Excellency, sir.
Your Excellency, Emerson Mnangagwa, President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Mrs. Grace Mugabe, and the family of the late Robert Gabriel Mugabe, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Excellencies, former Heads of State and Government, distinguished Heads of Delegation, and you, the great people of Zimbabwe, I join you today, Your Excellency, and the people of the Republic of Zimbabwe to bid farewell and to celebrate the life of an African liberation icon, the founding father of the Republic of Zimbabwe, and an elder statesman of our African continent, the late Comrade Robert Gabriel Mugabe, who passed on the 6th of September this year. On behalf of the government and the people of the Republic of Kenya, and on my own behalf, I extend my deepest and most heartfelt condolences to you, Your Excellency, and through you to Mrs. Grace Mugabe, the entire Mugabe family, and to the great people of the Republic of Zimbabwe, following the demise of the father of the nation. Comrade Mugabe will be remembered as a Pan-Africanist and a great icon of African liberation who selflessly dedicated his life to the emancipation of Zimbabwe and Africa. He was a visionary leader and a relentless champion of African dignity. The late President Mugabe has left an indelible mark in the history of Zimbabwe and the African continent at large through his political astuteness and zeal for the economic and political liberation of Africa. The onus is now on us to keep the hope alive and deliver on the dream of a truly free and prosperous Africa. That is the most befitting tribute we can pay to the departed African statesman. The late Comrade Mugabe was an embodiment of the Pan-African spirit, offering immeasurable assistance and solidarity to many other African countries in their struggles to end colonial rule and apartheid. As an African leader, as well as an intellectual giant, he was firm and steadfast regarding Africa's quest to address the challenges facing the continent. He was unwavering in his insistence that Africa's problems demanded African solutions. President Mugabe spent a lifetime challenging Africa to find its place and voice in the community of nations and remain faithful to this calling to his last breath. Further, Comrade Mugabe always put Africa's interests first and did not shy away from pushing for the ownership and prudent utilization of African resources for the benefits of the African people.
Although he was shunned by some for his fervent belief in the African cause, throughout his life he maintained close working relations with all his African counterparts, visiting many African countries, including Kenya, on several occasions. We remember fondly his last visit to Kenya during TICAD 6 in 2016 that was held in Nairobi. In honor of this gallant son of Africa, I call upon the leaders and the people of Africa to be united and to guard against negative influences and manipulation that may erode our common values and our aspirations for social economic emancipation and prosperity. As African leaders, we should continue to champion African interests as an endearing tribute to the late Comrade Mugabe and other departed icons of the African political and economic liberation struggle. In conclusion, I pray that God grants the family of the late President and the people of the Republic of Zimbabwe the strength and courage to overcome this great loss. May God bless Zimbabwe, God bless Africa, and may the soul of Comrade Mugabe rest in eternal peace. I thank you.
Your Excellency, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta for his words of comfort. May I also now invite His Excellency Brahim Gali, the President of the Sahrawi Arab Republic, to deliver his message. Your Excellency, sir.
فخامة الرئيس إميرسون منانغوا رئيس جمهورية زيمبابوي، أيها الشعب الزيمبابوي الشقيق، أصحاب الفخامة والمعالي والسعادة، رؤساء الدول والحكومات والوفود المشاركة، السيدات والسادة.
Of the sister Zimbabwe, Your Excellencies, Presidents and Heads of Governments here present, ladies and gentlemen.
باسم شعبي وحكومة الجمهورية الصحراوية، اسمحوا لي أن أعبر بداية عن أصدق عبارات التعزية والمواساة والتضامن مع الشعب الزيمبابوي الشقيق إزاء هذا المصاب الجلل، ألا وهو رحيل الزعيم روبرت غابرييل موغابي.
On behalf of the people of Sahrawi Republic, allow me to express our most heartfelt expressions of condolences, of mourning, and of solidarity with the brotherly people of Zimbabwe after this great loss of passing away of our leader, Robert Gabriel Mugabe. May his soul rest in eternal peace.
في أجواء الحزن البالغ والتأثر العميق، ها نحن نودع الرئيس موغابي، الأب المؤسس لجمهورية زيمبابوي، وواحداً من أعظم القادة الأفارقة الذين سجلوا حضورهم بحروف من ذهب في معركة إفريقيا نحو التخلص النهائي من كل مظاهر الاستعمار والميز العنصري.
In this moment of deep grief and emotion, we are gathered here today to pay our last respect and farewell to the founding father of the Republic of Zimbabwe and one of the most distinguished leaders of our continent of all times, who have engraved their names in gold letters in the Battle of Africa to eradicate all kinds of colonialism and racial segregation.
سيذكر تاريخ إفريقيا والبشرية جمعاء ذلك الدور المحوري الذي لعبه الرئيس موغابي المناضل والمقاتل الشرس من أجل الحرية، أولاً في تحرير بلاده زيمبابوي، ثم في تلك الملحمة التي قادتها دول المواجهة ضد الميز العنصري وذلك الدعم اللامشروط لحركات التحرر الإفريقية.
The African and the human history will recall the pivotal role played by President Mugabe as a leader and fearless freedom fighter, Kushango, for the freedom and liberation for his country, Zimbabwe, and then in the epic battle led by frontline countries against the horrendous apartheid regime. Also, he will be remembered forever for his unconditional support for the African liberation movements in the whole continent.
إننا نتحدث عن زعيم خالد دافع باستماتة منقطعة النظير حتى آخر يوم من حياته عن حرية إفريقيا وكرامتها ووحدتها واستقلاليتها وازدهارها ومكانتها المستحقة في العالم.
We are here speaking about a great immortal leader who strongly defended the freedom, dignity, unity, independence, and welfare of Africa until the last day of his life, for the sake of that Africa occupies its rightful place in the concert of nations.
إن الجمهورية الصحراوية حكومة وشعبا ستتذكر إلى الأبد باحترام تقدير وامتنان ذلك الموقف المبدئي الذي تبنته زيمبابوي بقيادة الرئيس الراحل روبرت موغابي وتتشبث به اليوم بثبات ووفاء إلى جانب كفاح الشعب الصحراوي العادل من أجل الحرية والاستقلال.
The government and the people of Sahrawi Republic will remember forever, with great respect and affection, and sense of gratitude, the principled position of Zimbabwe under the leadership of President Robert Mugabe. That same position is still defended today by Zimbabwe with faithfulness and honor towards the just struggle of the Sahrawi people for freedom and independence.
إنه التجسيد الميداني لتلك القناعة الراسخة لدى الآباء المؤسسين وزعماء التحرر في إفريقيا، والتي آمن بها الراحل موغابي كل الإيمان بأن حرية إفريقيا لن تكتمل ما دام هناك شعب على غرار الشعب الصحراوي لا تزال أجزاء من ترابه الوطني ترزح تحت نير الاستعمار والاحتلال.
That historical position was the translation of deeply entrenched belief of African founding fathers, which Mugabe has espoused, which stated that freedom of Africa will never be totally achieved as long as a people like the Sahrawi people is still facing foreign occupation of parts of his national territory.
ونحن نودع أيقونة في مسيرة التحرر الوطني الإفريقي. لا بد أن نندد بالحصار الظالم الذي تتعرض له زيمبابوي وما يخلفه من آثار خطيرة على حياة وأوضاع المواطنين في هذا البلد الإفريقي الشقيق، ونطالب برفعه فوراً لفسح المجال أمام الشعب الزيمبابوي للتمتع بكل الحقوق الاقتصادية والاجتماعية وغيرها التي تكفلها المواثيق والشرائع الدولية.
As we gathered here today to pay our last respect and farewell to an icon of African liberation, we cannot but condemn strongly the unjust embargo imposed on sanctions, imposed on Zimbabwe, and we condemn its negative consequences on the daily life of our brothers and sisters in Zimbabwe. We urge its immediate dismantling to open the door in front of the people of Zimbabwe to fully enjoy their legitimate social and economic rights enshrined in the international laws and charters.
نشاطركم أحزانكم كما نشاطر عائلة الفقيد في هذه اللحظات العصيبة معاناتها وفقدانها لأعز البشر إليها، كما نعزي شعب زيمبابوي وإفريقيا على فقدان الرفيق روبرت موغابي، وأصدق التضامن مع الشعب الزيمبابوي ومع شعوب إفريقيا التي فقدت هذه القامة الإفريقية. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وشكرا لكم.
We are here to share your sorrows and your sadness, and we want to once again reiterate our heartfelt condolences to the family of the late President Mugabe, to the Zimbabwean people as a whole, and to the government of Zimbabwe. I want to conclude by paying a faithful tribute to the late Robert Mugabe and to express our deep solidarity with the brotherly people of Zimbabwe. Long live Zimbabwe, long live Africa. I thank you.
شكرا.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, President Brahim Gali, for those comforting words. Can we please have Zeterapi Band 2 minutes of music, please? Interlude. Zeterapi Band.
Thank you, ZRP Band. In accordance with our program, Your Excellency, President Mnangagwa, may I invite His Excellency J.J. Rawlings, the former President of Ghana, to share with us his message. Your Excellency, sir.
Mr. President, Madam Mugabe, Your Excellencies, Comrade Presidents, comrade colleagues, we're here to join you to bid goodbye to one of the most formidable warriors of this continent. And I feel especially privileged to represent my country and President Nana to deliver this humble tribute. And I thank those who preceded me for what they also had to say. Ghanaians, especially those familiar with Africa's epic struggle for freedom, justice, and dignity, are greatly saddened by the irreplaceable loss of one of our continent's most inspiring liberation fighters. He was not only a popular and famous liberation fighter, Mugabe was not only a teacher, but most of all, an impressive moral compass. Our enduring affection for Robert Mugabe was equally rooted in the strong bonds of brotherhood that derived not only from his growing up, studying, and teaching in Ghana, but also marrying a Ghanaian lady called Sally Francesca Hevron, the wife of his youth, now interred at the Heroes' Acre here in Harare, supported him with youthful passion, energy, and wit as he wrestled his native Zimbabwe from the throes of ruthless colonialism. Though Zimbabwe, unlike most African countries, shed the yoke of colonialism in 1980, through Robert Mugabe's outstanding leadership, the country came to assume a prominent and enviable status globally shortly after attaining independence. Until his demise, President Mugabe had consistently demonstrated his steadfast commitment to our shared vision of the Africa we want, as defined in the Agenda document 2063. His continuous presence and eloquent speeches in important international gatherings such as the African Union summits and the United Nations General Assembly invariably carried echoes of a vision. From his fledgling years as a politician until the twilight of his time, he never lost his oratory skills and sharpness of wit. It is doubtful if his most rabid critics could fault his dialectic deductions and power to convince. He clearly understood the internal and external forces that continue to obstruct Africa's realization of that vision, and courageously did all he could to restrain them. Those who are familiar with the tragedies that have characterized much of Africa's post-independence era will no doubt appreciate how the burning desire of Robert Mugabe to end colonial exploitation earned him the wrath of the same aggressive foreign interests that were responsible for discrediting and destabilizing most of our progressive leaders. Our tears flow for our departed hero, an untiring steward of African progress, a pioneer of Black assertiveness, and an implacable opponent of neocolonialism. We salute his memory as his soul marches on to join the great patriots of our continent. On behalf of my President Nanado, on my own behalf, Your Excellencies, and each and every one of us, all comrades, I would like to offer my heartfelt condolences to Madam Grace Mugabe and the family and the children. Farewell, great one, and rest in peace. I thank you.
Your Excellency, may I thank His Excellency J.J. Rawlings for his comforting words. May I now invite Her Excellency Samia Suluhu, Vice President of Tanzania, to deliver her message. Madam Vice President.
Your Excellency, Comrade Emmerson Mnangagwa, President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Your Excellency, Madam Grace Mugabe and the family of Mugabe, members, comrades from the ZANU-PF, brothers and sisters from Zimbabwe, Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, Excellencies, former heads of state, fellow comrades and fellow mourners, I stand here on behalf of His Excellency Dr. John Pombe Magufuli, President of the United Republic of Tanzania, who so wished to join you and mourn with you today, but couldn't do so due to exigencies of office that could not be delegated. He has asked me to convey on his behalf and on behalf of your brothers and sisters of Tanzania the deepest sympathy and sorrow for the passing of the Africa's true son of the soil, an icon and luminary leader, the late former President of Zimbabwe, Comrade Robert Mugabe. Specifically, he sent his condolences to His Excellency President Emmerson Dambuzo Mnangagwa, our dear sister, Her Excellency Grace Mugabe, children, family, members of the people of Zimbabwe, members and the people of Zimbabwe. And he assures you that Tanzania stands by you during this time of great loss. Be assured that your loss is our loss and your pain is our pain. Comrade Mugabe valiantly led the ZANU-PF movement towards the emancipation of the people of Zimbabwe from the grips of colonization and neocolonialism, which won him many friends and equally foes. And most importantly, painstaking land reform that completed the Chimurenga's agenda for the independence of Zimbabwe. Your Excellencies, today as we celebrate the life of Africa's fallen giant, who gave us great pride and confidence, what remains with us is to continue where he ended. Indeed, former President Mugabe's spirit, determination, statesmanship, sense of humor, and ideals in emancipating the region will inspire us forever. Fare thee well, comrade, and may his soul rest in eternal peace. Amen. Long live the memory of Comrade Robert Mugabe. Long live the people of Zimbabwe. Wayeta Jako. Thank you very much. Asanteni sana.
May I thank Her Excellency Samia Sululu for those comforting words. ZRP band, please. ZRP band, please. Thank you. Now, Your Excellency President Mnangagwa, I proceed to invite His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of South Africa, to deliver his speech. Your Excellency, sir.
And now as we continue following proceedings at the National Sports Stadium, we've just heard speeches there from, amongst others, Jerry Rawlings, former President of Ghana, the Vice President of Tanzania, and now we're about to hear the remarks from our neighboring country's leader, Cyril Ramaphosa, from South Africa.
Your Excellency, heads of state and government, and former heads of state,
hello. Comrades, can we allow His Excellency to deliver his speech? Comrades,
Comrades, Pamsoroi, isusu sema Zimbabwe atidaro, isusu sema Zimbabwe atidaro, ngatinyararei, maZimbabwean ngatinyararei.
So there we go. We're currently waiting for the speech to commence from South Africa's leader, Cyril Ramaphosa, in this mourning period, but indeed in this period of celebration. You can see behind me, we've got now a bright colored image of our former president, because we've ceased to mourn, we have started to celebrate his life. And indeed, we're just waiting for the situation to calm down at the National Sports Stadium so that we can actually get audio of what is going on, so that the leader of South Africa commences his speech. And in the meantime, let us take a short breather.
Was one of the hardest things I've ever had to face.
And because I was away from home, it made it much more difficult.
That is when I saw how important it is to have a friend.
A friend to ease the burden.
A friend to take care of things when you can't.
A friend to help you get home.
Zimbabwe, and especially ZANU-PF, gave both moral and material support to us at a time when our leadership was forced into exile and our people were suffering under the yoke of apartheid. When South Africa became a democracy, President Mugabe was the first African head of state to be received by President Nelson Mandela. President Mandela paid tribute to him by saying the people of Zimbabwe, and you in particular, deserve our profound gratitude for the role you played in the national liberation effort, both as members of the OAU and in your capacity as the leader and the chair of the frontline states. This was indeed a fitting tribute. He was a committed Pan-Africanist, unwavering in his belief and destiny and fortunes of Africa. Above all, and of all this, we are both clear, he was an African hero. We'd like to thank President Mugabe and the people of Zimbabwe for the contribution they made to our struggle. We remember with respect the legacy of President Mugabe and the sacrifices that he personally made. We are grateful for this support, and we would like to say to the people of Zimbabwe, in the past 2 weeks, we as South Africans have been going through a challenging period. We have had acts of violence erupting in some parts of our country, some of which was directed at nationals from other African countries. This has led, as I can hear you are responding to the deaths and injuries of a number of people, some of whom were nationals from other countries, and the majority were South Africans. I stand before you as a fellow African to express my regret and to apologize for what has happened in our country. What has happened in South Africa goes against the principles of the unity of the African people that President Mugabe and President Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, and the great leaders of our continent stood for. I stand before you, fellow Zimbabweans, fellow Africans, to say we are working very hard to encourage all our people in South Africa to embrace people from all African countries. Your Excellencies, I would like to thank you for the support that you have offered us as South Africans during this difficult time. I would like to state it here and now that South Africans are not xenophobic. South Africans are not against nationals from other countries. We welcome people from other countries, and we are going to work very hard that we encourage and promote social cohesion of all the people of South Africa, working and living side by side with people from other parts of our continent. This we shall do because we want to embrace the spirit of unity that President Mugabe worked for throughout his life. And today we pay tribute to him and we say, Fambai Zwakanaka, Kushungo, Hambagache, Kulale Ngokolo, Kushungo. Thank you very much for giving me this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa, for your comforting words. May I now invite the former President of Namibia, His Excellency Dr. Sam Nujoma, to deliver his message. Your Excellency, sir.
Thank you very much, Director of Ceremonies, the bereaved Mugabe family, Your Excellency Emerson Mnangagwa, President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, and the entire bereaved nation of Zimbabwe. Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Your Excellencies, former Heads of State and Government, Honorable Ministers and Members of Parliament, Your Excellencies, members of the diplomatic corps, fellow monarchs, comrades and friends. We are gathered here to pay our respect to a great freedom fighter, Comrade Robert Mugabe, who made a great contribution to the total liberation of our continent. I remember here in Zimbabwe, there was a colonial oppressor, Ian Smith, who claimed at one point that there will be no independence in Zimbabwe, not even in his lifetime. But Comrade Mugabe and all ZANU-PF combatants engaged this man and defeated him at the battlefield. Today, we are all happy that Namibia and the rest of Africa are free forever. I wish you all renewed strength, and I thank you.
So indeed, there we are following the proceedings at the National Sports Stadium, where the official funeral is being held for the late, great Robert Gabriel Mugabe. Indeed, we got eulogies there coming most recently from former President of Namibia, Sam Nujoma. Indeed, there had been a bit of heckling towards the South African president, and he obviously attributed it to the recent going on in his country, whereas there were spontaneous bits and pieces of violence, xenophobic violence in that country. But he apologized for and on behalf of his nationals, much to the joy of Zimbabweans who cheered him on because of his statement that said xenophobia and violence had no place in his society or any society before. Of course, he celebrated the life of President Robert Mugabe, a life we're celebrating today with a beautiful, bright mural, because much as it is a period of mourning, it is also a period of celebration. Let us take you back to the National Sports Stadium, where proceedings are continuing. And that was an image of the man that we're celebrating here today, a man who's being celebrated at the National Sports Stadium. And indeed, we're continuing with that coverage. We'll cross you back to the National Sports Stadium. But before then, let us take a quick breather.
Was one of the hardest things I've ever had to face.
And because I was away from home, it made it much more difficult.
That is when I saw how important it is to have a friend.
A friend to ease the burden.
A friend to take care of things when you can't.
A friend to help you get home.